So, welcome to Let's Talk Rules. This is the This is the section of the rule book that we have so far not covered. It covers the first 5 rules in the rule book regarding facilities, equipment, and participants. So we're going to have a look at. There's someone that needs to go on mute. The feedback. Me.
Yeah, I think it's fun. Nick,
everyone's on mute now.
Yeah, someone's muted everyone, and you're on mute now, Nick.
Okay, I'm not on mute anymore.
There you go.
Good. Okay. Every time something about this program catches me out, I'll by the time you'd have thought after sort of 13 sessions or however many we've done that I would be getting a bit better at this. Right. Okay. So chapter 1 then, facilities and equipment. We're going to have a look at. We're going to do the usual thing. We're going to look at the rules. So around playing area, net and posts, balls, teams, team leaders. And we're going to look at the rule text of the 17 to 20 rules, and we'll consider any changes that come through in the 21 to 24 rule text, and the referee guidelines, and obviously the case book if there is anything. And there's a few questions around the coach, which is a lot. There's a lot more work around the coach than other areas of this. So the playing area. Absolutely. So the playing area. So this is where we get into definitions and thinking about what is the playing area and what isn't the playing area. So the playing area is the area that includes the playing court and the free zone, and it should be rectangular and symmetrical. Now, the key thing to remember here is that the playing court is the whole court. The court specifically refers to the court of one team. So court A to the left of the scorer, to the right of the first referee, court B to the right of the scorer and left of the first referee. They are courts, but both together they are the playing court. And the playing court plus the free zone makes up the playing area. And the control area is the playing area and the area between the playing area and the spectators. And this terminology is carried throughout the rules as to what is within the control area or within the playing area or is on the court. So these are key elements of definition that we take when we are looking at the rules, that we understand what the rules are saying, because how they refer to the court or the playing court or the playing area, then you know what the rules are referring to. And you know that the rules talk about zones and they talk about areas, and a zone is found within the playing area. So the zones only occur with the playing court and the free zone, and areas are more general and either occur outside the playing area, or they refer to the whole of the competition hall. That's just a little bit on the terminology and the definitions of what we're going to talk about here. So when we're looking at a court, we have the court, and it is bounded by an area which is called the free zone. And there we have court A and court B, and both courts are the playing court, and the playing court and the free zone is the playing area. And that is what we're talking about when we say the playing area. So the playing court, i.e. court A and court B, is a rectangle measuring 18 by 9 meters, and it's surrounded by a free zone, which is a minimum of 3 meters wide on all sides. The free playing space is the space above the playing area, which is free from any obstructions and shall measure a minimum of 7 meters in height from the playing surface. So this is the space which is essentially how tall is the sports hall, and where is the first obstacle hanging from the ceiling of the hall. So that obstacle, or that first protrusion down, needs to be at 7 meters or above within the rules. Now there are sports halls which are challenging, that are much lower than that, or are just at 7 meters. But in general, most sports halls are high enough for 7 meters and don't have any issues. But that means that the whole of the area, including the area over the free zone, should be the same. Okay, so when it says that the free playing space shall measure 7 meters in height, it means 7 meters in height from the back of the service zone to the other back of the other service zone at the other end of the court, and all the area in between. Okay, should be that minimum. Now for FIVB World and Official competitions, the free zone should measure 5 meters, and the service zone, or the area behind the end line, should measure up to 6.5 meters. So when you go into a sports hall and you've got a very large area around in the service zone and behind the end lines, you really should be delimiting that to 6.5 meters maximum, and you just need to pace it out so that you don't give more space than is necessary. And you need to make sure that both ends of the court are the same. So if you've got one end which is maybe 4 meters and the other end has got no restriction, then you have to really work out with the teams that 4 meters is as far as you're going to go. And hopefully that you can find enough space to ensure that the free zone on each side of the court is roughly the same size as well, although that's more problematic than the surface zones in most of the halls that we use. So the playing surface itself should be flat, horizontal and uniform, and it shouldn't present any danger to the players. And it's forbidden to play on rough or slippery surfaces. Now, this is the one where you wander around the court before the start of the match, just checking to make sure that there's nothing sticking out of the floor, or there's no broken floorboards or whatever which need to be taped over, just to make sure that it is actually safe. And I think it's this rule also that leads us into the real difficulties of teams going, oh, I need to mop the floor, ref, and standing there until they've actually dried the floor before actually willing to move on. And this is one where you just need to watch that is not being used as a delaying tactic rather than actually a safety issue. The FIVB says that indoor courts, the surface of the court should be of a light colour, and this is where they're making the distinction to say that the court is one colour and the free zone is another. I wish in many of the sports halls that we work in, but all you need to do is to make sure that you identify what the playing court is and what the line colour that you're using. Now, for official competitions, white is the colour for the lines, but obviously in sports halls that have multi-sport markings, you just need to make sure that you can pick out the volleyball court colour, and you can focus on that colour and that court within the floor. The rules go on to say that outdoor courts should have a drainage allowed for them, but we don't have too many outdoor courts, and the ones that we have are temporary, and therefore I'm not sure that we would worry too much about that one as we go on. Right. So the lines on the court, the lines are 5 centimeters wide, and all lines, there is one line that is not 5 centimeters, but all lines and bands on the net and everything is 5 centimeters wide. And they should be of a light color, which differentiates them from the floor and any other lines, which you just need to do when you're focusing on the court. Then these lines form the boundary lines. So these are the 2 side lines and the 2 end lines, marking the playing court. And they are drawn inside the dimensions of the playing court. So this is when you're looking at rules around ball in and ball out. You need to remember that the line is on the inside of the court. So it's the outer edge of the line, and that applies to all lines. So it's always the outer edge, the edge furthest from the center line for the attack line and the end line, and the outer edge of the two sidelines, and that is your court and how each line should be defined. So the centre line is the slight difference to this, because it's the axis that divides the two courts. It's 5 centimeters wide as well, but it is considered to belong to both courts equally. So a court A, say, of 9 meters by 9 meters, is 9 meters from the center of the center line, not from the back edge, the edge furthest away from court A, or the nearest edge of the center line. It's the middle. So 2.5 centimeters down the middle of there is a imaginary line, and that is the line that determines the 9 meters to court A and the 9 meters to court B. So in addition to the center line, we have the attack line, and there is a attack line on each court. Its rear edge, and this is what I'm saying, that it's the furthest away from the center line. Its rear edge is 3 meters back from the axis of the center line. Okay, and that marks the extent of the front zone. And the attack line is one of these lines that is deemed to extend imaginary up until the end of the free zone. So you just have to remember that this line doesn't just stop when it gets to the sideline. In some sports halls, you might be lucky and you have the extension lines on it, but otherwise it goes all the way up to the end of the free zone. And you just have to remember that, particularly when maybe an attack, back row attack is taking place in the free zone rather than on the court. So here is a useful diagram that kind of shows the center line and the fact that the attack line is 3 meters from the middle of the center line, and that the attack line is drawn 3 meters back, and that that the center line actually has this imaginary line down the middle, and this is the space which is determined as a front zone, but we'll get to zones in a moment. So that's effectively the lines on the court. This is where you use your terminology. So when you're talking to people about the lines on the court, you refer to them in this way. So the sideline, the end line, the attack line, and the center line. So the attack line, often you hear people talk about it as the 3 meter line, but its actual terminology in the rules is the attack line. So when I said about numbers, all the numbers that we've just considered make up the sort of numbers that you need to remember in your mind. So a court is 9 meters by 9 meters. The playing court is 18 meters by 9 meters. And then the free zone is 3 meters minimum and 5 meters maximum, except the surface zone. The surface zone is 9 meters wide and 3 meters minimum deep and 6.5 meters maximum deep. So therefore, the playing area, the total playing area, is a minimum of 24 meters by 15 meters and a maximum of 31 meters by 19 meters. And that's the largest that the playing area should be. However it is delimited, it should be a maximum of 31 by 19. Now, if you're checking to make sure that the court is actually square, you need to know the diagonal measurements of a court. And a diagonal measurement of a court is 12.728 meters. And the diagonal measurement of the playing court is 20.12 meters. And when you're checking the measurements of a court, you would measure corner to corner on the long diagonal and the short diagonal, and you do it in both corners of both courts, just to make sure that the whole thing is square. The posts are situated 1 meters outside the sideline. That's the center of the post. We've already reminded ourselves that the lines are 5 centimeters wide and they're drawn inside the court. And the extension of sidelines in the surface zone is one line drawn 20 centimeters from the end of the line, and it's 15 centimeters long. And there's just one of them, and it should be in all 4 corners of the court. And it tells you that for the surface zone is bounded by the extension, the imaginary extension of the sideline. Okay, so that delimits the surface zone. And then we also know that obviously the attack line is extended by a 1.75 meters long extension of dashed lines of 5 short 15 centimeter lines drawn 20 centimeters from each other from the sideline. And that should occur on in the free zone or at each end of the 2 attack lines. And then if we've got a warm-up area, it is and the rules talk about approximate here. They don't say it has to be 3 meters by 3 meters. They say it's approximately 3 meters by 3 meters. And that is actually found outside the free zone. So it's an area, not a zone. Okay. And the one line that we don't talk about anymore is the coaches restriction line. The coaches restriction line has now been removed from the rules. It doesn't exist. So if you see any old diagrams with the coaches restriction line on them, there is no coaches restriction line anymore. Okay, so zones and areas. So we have a couple of zones and areas on the court and in the playing area. So we have the front zone, which is limited by the axis of the center line and the rear edge of the attack line. And then the front zone, remember, is considered to extend beyond the sidelines to the end of the free zone. And we've talked about the surface zone being the area 9 meters wide behind each end line. Okay, and the extension of the sidelines delimit that zone. Okay, so therefore the server must take off. Last contact with the floor must be inside the surface zone in order for the service to be legal. We also have the substitution zone, and the substitution zone is limited by the extension of both attack lines up to the scorer's table on the scorer's side of the court, second referee. And we know that the substitution zone, it's important to know where it starts and ends. And obviously the player now entering the substitution zone is the announcement and the request for substitution. So that moment of stepping into this zone is now the important part of the substitution process. We then have the Libro replacement zone, and that is found on the bench side of the court, and it is part of the free zone in front of the team benches, and it's limited by the extension of the attack line right up to the end line. Okay, so it's anywhere along that sideline. And the Libro replacement should technically take place in this zone. It shouldn't take place on the court. It shouldn't take place over the end line. It shouldn't take place in the substitution zone. It takes place in a Libro replacement zone. And sometimes you need to remind the players that is exactly where it is, because particularly if you've got a player that's coming back at 4 on court B, sometimes they will run straight onto the interposition, and they will run through the substitution zone, which may make the scorer think, oh, this is a substitute. So you need to remind them that they enter and leave from the Libro replacement zone, which is in the back zone of the court. So here's our playing area again, and our control area, and we can see that the playing area is bounded by the dark black line, and within it we have the zones: the free zone, the surface zone, the front and back zone on the court, the substitution zone, and the 2 Libro replacement zones. And then the key thing to remember here is that the bench and the scorer's table are outside of the free zone. So they are, so as soon as you get to the bench, that's where the free zone ends. Okay, and that bench should be up to a maximum of 5 meters, minimum of 3 meters and a maximum of 5 meters from the sideline. So that is the main element of the numbers for the court. So just for note, the new rules 21 to 24 have removed the coaches restriction line, and they have also removed the penalty area. Okay, so this is an element of trying to declutter and remove people from around the court to now enable the spectators to see a much clearer view of the court. Okay, so with the penalty area being removed, it now means that a player that has been expelled must go to the changing room until the start of the next set. Okay, so they do not stay courtside. If you expel a player, that player should leave the control area and go to the changing room, where they will remain until they are called back to the court. Just a little bit on temperature and lighting. I don't think I've worried too much about these two elements of the rules, but the minimum temperature should not be below 10 degrees C. I wish in some sports halls during the winter, but that's what the rules say. And it shouldn't be higher than 25 degrees. But in general, in some places you'll find that is the case, and it's probably more humidity which is the issue rather than the actual temperature. And the lighting. The rules didn't used to mention lighting for recreational volleyball, but they now do. They talk about 300 lux, which is not particularly bright, but it is enough to be able to see what's going on. But if you're in FIVB world and official competitions, they've just increased the lux requirement from 1500 to 2000 lux. And that's because of the increased use of challenge systems and Hawkeye and HDTV. And the broadcasters requiring a much better lighting view of the court. And at 2000 lux is the sort of lighting where you don't get shadows from the players, which you can do at much lower levels. And that's why it's in the rules. So the net and posts. So the net is vertically over the center line, and the top is set at 2.43 meters for men and 2.24 meters for women. Its height is measured from the center of the playing court, and the net height over the two sidelines must be exactly the same and must not exceed the official height by more than 2 centimeters. So that means that for men, it's a maximum of 2.45 meters, and for women, 2.26 meters. But it should be the same at both ends. So if one end is 2.26, the other end needs to be 2.26 as well. Just remember that there shouldn't be a differential across the net. The net structure, it's 1 meters wide or 1 meter deep, and it's between 9.5 and 10 meters long. And remember that if the posts are 1 meter outside of the playing court, then the two posts are 11 meters wide, and therefore a net of 10 meters should allow you half a meter, 50 centimeters of area between the end of the net and the post at each end for the ropes and the ties. So that should either be, but if the net is only 9.5 meters long, then obviously that space will be 3/4 of a meter of space there. So the net itself has a top horizontal band, and this is the only white line on the court which is wider than 5 centimeters, and that band should be 7 centimeters. Now, there should also be a band along the bottom of the net, and that band is actually 5 centimeters, the same as the lines on the court. But anyway, so this top band is twofold canvas. This is where the cord fastening the band to the post is kept, and those are either Kevlar or a metal band. And within the band, there's also flexible cable fastens the net to the post and keeps it taut. But at the bottom of the net, there's a similar band, 5 centimeters wide, which also has as a threaded a rope, which keeps the bottom of the net taut as well. Okay, so one thing about when the net's set up is that the mesh outside the antenna on both sides of the court should be equal to make sure that the court looks as though it's equalized on both sides. The two white bands are fastened vertically to the net directly over each sideline. They're 5 centimeters wide again, 1 meter long, and they're considered to be part of the net. An antenna is a flexible rod, 1.8 meters long and 10 millimeters in diameter, and 1 meter of it is inside the sideband, and 80 centimeters of it is extending above the net, and that 80 centimeters is marked with 10 centimeter stripes of contrasting color, preferably red and white. The antenna are considered as part of the net, and they laterally delimit the crossing space. Okay, and one thing to note is the antenna are always fixed at position 4. Okay, so when you're looking at a net, that's where you should see from position 4, the antenna should be on your side of the net. Okay. So here's the handy diagram from the rules, looking at the net with all of the various cables and measurements, and as to what you've got. So we've just covered all of that. So the one thing here is that you can see that you've got a mesh of the net of 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. Now that mesh can be smaller than that. There are 5 centimeters by 5 centimeter nets. There are also nets that have LED systems in them, which are even smaller, still 2.5 by 2.5. But the rules say that the standard net should be 10 by 10, but obviously whatever is sanctioned by the individual competition. But in most parts, nets are 10 by 10. So let's have a look at something about the sideband then, and let's just remember that the sideband is part of the net. Okay, so let's just watch this passage of play here and see what we think. Okay, so we've got a block there which forces the ball down into the net. The ball hits the sideband and then onto the playing court, and the team is awarded the point as ball in. Now the team in black have challenged the decision of ball in, and their argument is that whilst the ball hit the sideband, it changed direction, and because in order for it to change direction, it must have hit the antenna. And this is the case whereby the sideband is okay, but if it changes direction, i.e. it must have hit the antenna. And as you can see, it's our good friend Vital Hainen here, who is getting quite worked up about this. And luckily Stefano there is calming him down. And he's quite right. The ball here has clearly hit the sideband and the antenna. And therefore the ball is out of the block, not in on the playing court. Because when you look at it from the end, you can see that the ball has deviated quite considerably from the direction it was taking to where it landed on the court. So it must have hit something solid. If it's hit something solid, it's hit the antenna, even though the antenna is within the sheath, it's within the sideband. It's not, it can't be seen in quite a few cases here, but you know that it's solid, and therefore that must be what the ball has hit. So in this instance, that's what they should be getting to. Okay, so let's just move on. Should we see that again? Do you want to see it again? Let's have a look at how much the ball moves. That proves that it does hit the sideband. Let's go back to the start, bring it back, and watch the play again. As you can see, the ball's come down quite quickly off the block, but you can see that the ball was going out, and it only stopped from going out by hitting the antenna, and therefore hitting the antenna is out as well. So therefore, straight off the block, it hasn't hit the attacker again. So this should be ball out, and the point should go to Safety Perugia in this instance. Okay, the posts. So the posts are supporting the net. They're at a distance of 0.5 to 1 meters outside the sidelines, but as you said, the rules identify that we would much rather they were a meter outside, because if they're only half a meter outside and you've got a 10-meter net, then your net is essentially attached to the posts right up against the post with no gap. They are 2.55 meters high, and they're preferably adjustable. Okay, they should be smooth and round, fixed to the ground without wires, and there should be no dangerous or obstructing devices. So this is one of your checks before the start of the match, that the posts and the net are fixed correctly, that they're taut, that the ball rebounds off the net, that the posts present no danger to the teams, and if possible, if they can be padded, then let's get them padded, and also the base of the post as well, just to make sure that they don't provide any problems. And if there are bits sticking out, then you need to work out a way of mitigating the potential for injury from the posts. That's one of your pre-match checks. So what do the guidelines say about this? Well, the guidelines say that due to the elasticity of the net, then the first referee should check that it's correctly tightened, and you should go along and throw a ball into the net before the match just to see how baggy or how much elasticity there is in the net. In general, the ball should rebound out of the net to allow a player to recover it. It shouldn't hit the net and drop vertically down so that it drops into the opponent court, because then that suggests the net is not tightened enough. Okay, it needs to drop on the same side as the ball went into it. And if the ball goes down the net, it should hit the bottom band of the net, and then that should push it back into the court as well. It shouldn't be able to roll down the net and then drop vertically straight to the floor. If it is that, then the net probably isn't tight enough. And one of the things that you need to do when you're checking the net before the start of the match and you're checking its height is don't check its height until it's been tightened. When the net is tightened, you know that it will change its height. So what you need to do is you either need to make sure that it is slightly higher than what you need it to be, and therefore you know that when you tighten it, you might have pulled it down into position. Or when you've tightened it, you can then just gently pull it down by the cords to achieve the correct height for the net. But what you don't want to do is say that it's exact and then go and tighten it, because you will have lowered it. So you need to make sure whichever way you do it, whichever routine you approach, you need to make sure that the net is tight enough so that the things with the ball can happen. And you also must make sure that it doesn't change the height of it if you do it after you've checked it. The line judges obviously check that the side bands are exactly perpendicular to the playing surface, and they can move during the game. So they need to just be checked relatively often, just to make sure that they are still vertical and over the sideline. And here it also mentions that the referees must check that the posts and the referee's stand present no danger to the players. Okay. And if you discover objects which might risk injury, the referee should request that the organisers remove or cover them. Okay, and we will return to objects that might cause injury in a second. So what else do we have in the equipment? We've got the ball, of course, and it's now taken that it should be made. It should be spherical, obviously, made of a flexible leather or synthetic leather case, with the bladder inside made of rubber or similar material. Nowadays, I think it's pretty much taken that the ball will always be synthetic, and there aren't many leather balls out there. But originally, obviously, when the rules were first written, the leather balls were quite common. It mentions that the uniform of light color or combination of colors, and the basis of this is that the balls that are used are homologated by the FIVB as being acceptable, and therefore that's when the types of balls and their reference number. So this is the latest international game ball, the V300W, and this says that the FIVB have approved this ball, and this ball is acceptable for use in matches. So its circumference is 65 to 67 centimeters. They don't vary that much, and its weight is 260 to 280 grams. Now weights do vary. If you were in a long tournament with a lot of match balls, so you could have up to maybe 200 match balls used in a long tournament like the VNL or the Olympic Games, and those match balls would all be weighed, and they would be weighed so that you had a range of weights. So if the weight was between 260 and say I can't remember the exact weights, but 260 to say 265, it would be class A ball. 265 to 275 would be a class B ball, and over 275 would be a class C ball. And what you do is you weigh all the balls and you divide them up into A, B, C, so that when you're choosing a set of match balls, you choose all the match balls from A, so they all weigh in the same weight range. Otherwise, you could get one ball which is 260 and one ball which is 280 as your match balls. We don't do any checks on the weights of match balls, but that's the reason why we talk about weights. But we do know that the inside pressure of the ball should be between 0.3 and 325 kg per centimeters squared, and that is the figure that we are looking for. Now, when we check the pressure of the ball, we should be certain not to set it at 0.3 and not set it at 0.325. And the reason for that is that we all have various pressure gauges. Nobody checks them against each other. So therefore, pick a position in the middle, 0.31 or 315, and go for that as being the pressure that you want the ball. And then you've got leeway either side in case your pressure gauge is not quite accurate. Okay, if you go for the extremes, then you could easily have a ball which is under 0.3 or a ball which is over 325. Okay, and the uniformity of the ball, uniformity of the ball is that all the balls used in a match should be the same. So just make sure that they are all the same. They all have the same reference number on them. So in the case of the international ball, each ball is a V300W, or you're still using the MVA 200 or the MVA 300, or whichever molten or Gala balls are allowed, but make sure that all of them are the same. So that is the equipment. A quick run through of the equipment, and I'm pretty certain that all of you probably knew all of those numbers before you came here, because they're the ones that you start and you learn and you keep them in your head so that you don't have to look them up. You know exactly what they are, and it's always good to make sure that you know those figures, so that when you get to a game, you're not looking for information on those. They are the fundamentals of setting the match up. So let's go on to participants, and this is where it gets a little bit more interesting as to what you get. So team composition. So this is rule 4.1.1, and this rule has actually been causing some issues for us this year. So what 4.1.1 says is that a team consists of up to 12 players, and the coaching staff equals one coach, a maximum of 2 assistant coaches, and you can have a medical team of 1 therapist and 1 medical doctor. And that only those listed on the score sheet may normally enter the competition control area and take part in the official warm-up and the match. Now, the bit that causes us some issues is that if you watch international volleyball or see anything on the television or in senior leagues around Europe, you will notice that teams are using 14 players. So we have teams in the MVL that are trying to use 14 players, but at the moment we use the rules of game which say 12. Now this is a difficult one when you get to a game, because you get to a game and the team's got 14 players, and it's a very difficult message to stand there and say to the coach, okay, which 2 of you guys aren't playing then? So you may have to, in those cases, be a bit pragmatic, but obviously write your comments on the score sheet so that the competitions working group know which teams are trying to use 14 players and whether they need to make some changes to the competition regulations. Now, with 14 players, if a team does have 14 players, it must have 2 liberos. If it has 13 players, it must have 1 libero. Okay, but if it has 12 players, it doesn't have to have any liberos. And this is why the score sheet has 12 spaces for players above the libero box, because you can have 12 and 0, 11 and 1, or 10 and 2, okay, in that space. And that's why there's 12 there. It's not so that teams can go, well, the score sheet says I can have 14 because there are 14 spaces. It's not reason for that. It's because you can have 12 players and no liberos. Okay, that's the reason that there are 12 spaces for players on the roster. Okay, so one of the players is the team captain. The current rules say except the libero, who shall be indicated on the score sheet. Now this is changing. So in the 21 to 24 rules, the libero can be the captain. The key thing to remember that if the libero is the captain, then the libero will be off the court at various times during the match. So you need to know, if the libero is not on the court, who the game captain is. And this is one of the thinking behind why the libero shouldn't be the game captain when they brought the libero rules into the game in around 2000. because they thought that, well, because the Libro's on and off all the time, then the referee's trying to keep track of who the game captain is. So why make the Libro the game captain or the team captain and just cause this problem? So you have one of the players as the team captain. And only the players recorded on the score sheet may enter the court and play in the match. Once the coach and the team captain have signed the score sheet and recorded, the recorded players cannot be changed. This is key. This is why they must check, and they must check that their numbers. You must check the team lists are correct. You must check that everyone is there, because if they sign the score sheet and there is a player that is not on the score sheet that is trying to take part in the match, then they will be an illegal player, an unregistered player, and the consequences for unregistered players taking part in the match are considerable. Nacho, you've got a question.
Yes. So, what is the maximum deadline for the coaches to sign the score sheet? So imagine there's you're on the game and fill in the roster and all that, to do the toss, tell them to sign the score sheet, and they say, well, we still have one player that hasn't come yet, hasn't arrived yet.
Yeah. So the coach should sign the score sheet, ideally before the captain. So the captain signs the score sheet at the toss. So the coach should really have checked everything before you get to the toss. So as soon as the score sheet is ready, then you can go to the coach and say, Coach, can you check the score sheet and can you sign it, please, to check your roster? Now, if a player has not arrived yet, they can add them. They should include them in the team roster. And if the player doesn't take part in the match, then either you strike it through at the end of the match or you just leave it. Obviously, if the player is playing up, then you want to make sure that they don't get identified as playing up if they haven't actually been there.
Right.
But you need to get the coach to sign as early as you can, because the coach is confirming that the team list that was given to the scorer and the players that have been transposed from the team list onto the score sheet are correct, and those are the ones that are going to take part in the match. That, as I say, one way in international volleyball, it's easy to get the coach to do this because you don't give them the bench tablet, until they've signed the score sheet. And obviously they need to input the lineup at 12 minutes before the start of the match, or when the official warm-up begins. So therefore they need to have signed the score sheet, and it's one way of making sure that the coach actually comes to do it, if they actually have to come over and get the lineup sheets or something. But when they have their own lineup sheets, maybe that's not as much an incentive. But if they need something, then they'll come to you for it at various times. And it's also a reminder that when the coach signs the score sheet, that you tell him, Coach, I'll be wanting your lineup sheets at the start of the official warm-up, please. So as soon as you know, Coach, that whether your team is receiving or serving, then you need to do your lineup sheet, because I'll be wanting it straight away. Okay,
right.
Those are the times that you need to be working.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. So one other thing that signing the score sheet does is it confirms who's going to be on the bench. So it confirms who the bench personnel are, and anybody who's not on the score sheet when it's signed is not going to sit on the bench. Okay. Now, in our competition, in order to have a therapist and a medical doctor, they need to be registered with the competent governing body, which is the CEV and the FIVB. And therefore, in England, you're unlikely to find that you won't find a medical doctor, that's for certain. There's only probably one or two around that have that accreditation, and there aren't many physiotherapists either that have the accreditation to say that they are a physiotherapist who can sit on the bench. They can obviously have a bench personnel card and be an assistant coach. That's no problem. Okay, so just make sure that when you're looking at the score sheet and you have your C, AC, M and T, or T and M in the coaches area of the score sheet, that you know what each one of those mean. Location of the team. So it says the players not in play should either sit on the team bench or be in the warm-up area. The coach and other team members sit on the bench but may temporarily leave it. The benches for teams are located beside the scorer's table and are outside the free zone. Only the team composition members are permitted to enter the playing area to sit on the bench during the match and participate in the official warm-up session. So when it says official warm-up session, it means over the net. So at that point, anybody who is not on the score sheet must leave the playing area. So that's absolutely, and we know that the playing area is the playing court and the free zone. So they must, at that point, leave the playing area. So in an international match, if the coach is able to determine who is going to sit on the bench with them, and they can identify up to 4 assistant coaches, they don't have to have the therapist and the medical doctor on the bench. If the medical doctor and the therapist are not on the bench, they can sit in the control area outside the playing area and be called upon if they're needed. But at that point, the point you start the official warm-up, only those people that are on the score sheet that have been signed as being part of the team may take part in that official warm-up. So that's the point at which, if you see a statistician come over the hoarding at the back of the court and help the Libro warm up, that's the point where you have to identify them, say to the coach, you have an unauthorized team member on the back of the court, please ask them to leave the playing area. And you need to just do your checks to make sure you know who is supposed to be there. Okay. Players not in play may warm up without balls during play in the warm-up areas, during timeouts in the free zone behind the court, that's not on the court, that's in the free zone behind the court, and during set intervals, they may warm up with balls in their own free zone. Okay, so those are the distinctions. They are not allowed to have a ball in the warm-up area, but they are allowed to get them out of the ball cart and use them during the set intervals. Try not to allow them to use match balls. Okay, make sure it's a practice ball. Then you won't lose track of it, and you won't lose it as you go through the game. Equipment. This causes some challenge as well for us at times. Equipment. A player's equipment consists of a jersey, shorts, and socks, and shoes. Okay, so that is the uniform for play. Okay, and in our minimum operating standards for the National Volleyball League, it clearly says that Super League and Division 1, the players must have equipment consisting of a jersey, shorts, socks, and sport shoes. And it goes on to say the colour and design for the jerseys, shorts, and socks must be uniform for the team. Uniform means uniform. Yeah, it doesn't mean that one player can have shorts down to their knees and another player have them barely below their waist. It doesn't mean socks can be up to the knees on one player and another player says, "Oh, I'm wearing trainer socks that have disappeared into my trainers and you can't see them." It means that they're uniform. Now, if everybody's wearing them, fine, no problem. Everybody's the same. But what you shouldn't have is all of these differences. Okay, so uniform means uniform. Okay, and when you're looking at the operating standards with things like socks, you need to make sure that everyone is wearing them and they are all the same color, and you can see them. Okay, and this is just simple things that if you keep reiterating these points across the teams, they will eventually get the idea. The first referee must check the uniforms, and they must. All right, I'm going to stop there because immediately Rita's hand has gone up. So, yes, Rita.
In the minimum operating standards bit of the regulations, it doesn't actually say the socks have got to be the same length. It says shorts and socks sock length. It says same colour only, Super League and Division 1, and similar colour for Division 2 and 3. So it doesn't actually say they've got to be uniform, whereas it says all kit, shirts and shorts must be uniform, but it doesn't actually say it about the socks.
Well spotted. I didn't realise that. That makes it a bit problematic for the teams that come across me. Then
well, that's where I got quoted. I actually quoted because I did Bristol and Coventry shortly after we were discussing that after the meeting, and I pointed out to them there was trainer socks, short socks, knee-length socks, and I said, uniform, guys. And both teams absolutely went apeshit. One of them was going to write to VE about it, but she said, where's it say? And I quoted it, and they actually said, it doesn't say the same length. It just says same colour. And I thought, okay, I haven't got an argument for that one.
Well, it kind of does say the same length because the rules of game say that they have to be uniform. And if the regulations don't stipulate something, then the rules of game apply. So you can say, well, even though it doesn't say in the regulations, for example, about the ball hitting the court being in, but the rules do. So you can use
yeah,
the
but
argument.
conversely, in the regulations, it says shorts and sock length must be the same colour only. So it actually mentions the word length, but doesn't say they have to be the same. It just says same colour only.
So we can
It's
use the word.
ambiguous.
It is slightly ambiguous, but you can always go back and say, well, in actual fact, the rules of game say this, and the rules of game apply, regardless of what the regulations. But the regulations don't say it, the rules of game do say it, and therefore the rules of game apply. You can use that argument. Not sure it'll get you very far at the time, but you can point it out anyway. But keep pointing it out. That's the main thing. If we point it out often enough, then eventually somebody might clock that this is a very small thing that they can do to change it. Because I always use the standard response to them, and that standard response is you could probably kit the entire club out at Sports Direct for less than 20 quid. So please do not have a go at me about the fact that your players can't all come in the same colour socks or the same length, roughly the same length socks, even if they're not all the same. So anyway, that's just a minor point for us as we go through. But the Nacho, you had a point, and I think Tim's got a point as well. With this, Nacho, you're gonna.
I'm just reading the regulations, and I think what it says is same color only in Super League and Division 1, similar color Division 2 and 3.
Right.
So it's not that only applies to the color, it's that only in Super League and Division 1 they should be the same color, and just similar color in Division 2 and 3.
Okay. So the implication is that they should be uniform, isn't it? That's my take on it.
That's how I see it. Yeah, the same length.
Maybe this is semantics. So we'll keep an eye and see what feedback we get back from the clubs as we go through the year. Tim, what did you want to make a point on?
He's muted.
Unmuted.
Okay, here we go. It's taking some time to unmute. I do believe there's somewhere in the rules it says the fact a player may play with bare feet. Is this correct?
A player may play in barefoot.
Yes.
It is in the rules. It is
Yes.
There it is there, 4.4 to play barefoot, and this is because there are countries in the world where the game is played outside, and you know maybe sports shoes are not what people can afford or use, and therefore this allows them to play the game. I suspect this has been in here for some considerable years, and it's just one that they've just not decided to take out at any stage. But I would not expect a player to turn up indoors and try and play barefoot. Frankly, I would think it would be dangerous. I would strongly advise that you didn't allow it to happen. If you ever came across it, I don't think you ever would, but you know, if you did come across it, then maybe you should dissuade the player from their folly.
Okay, well, I just thought it was in the rules somewhere. I remember.
Yeah. You're quite right. Well remembered. Good for that. Well done. So the colour and design of jerseys, shorts, and socks must be uniform for the team, except the Libro, and the uniforms should be clean. And this is just about image of the teams, so they're all consistent. And also, you know, the shoes used to say that black shoes were not allowed, but with the way sports shoes have gone, it's pretty difficult now to not have black shoes. I think the game at one stage, CEV, when I started my international career, you had to check players' shoes, and anybody that had predominantly black shoes, you had to tell them to go and change. Now I think that the players' sponsors and shoe sponsors and all of this sort of stuff, pretty much anything goes in terms of shoe colour, as long as they don't present any dangers to everyone. And the get out for the first referee in when you've got a technical delegate is that you go to the technical delegate and point all this stuff out and let them deal with it, so you don't have a conflict with the teams. Obviously, when we're managing our own games, we would point these things out, but generally, I wouldn't point this out until after the match. There's no point getting into a fight with a team before the start of a game. Really isn't. You could ask them, little things that they could do, like for example, if somebody turns up with the wrong compression or whatever, then you could get it changed there and then. But if it's a general point about something that could you change this for a future match, look to talk to them afterwards, or even write them an email. But make sure it goes on the score sheet and point it out to them so that the competitions group know what the challenges are out there. So if we then go on to players' jerseys, so players' jerseys must be numbered 1 to 20. We have some dispensations for teams in Division 3 in the National League. We've got a team in Division 1 at the moment, which is, or even, I think it is in Division 1, it might even be in Super League, where one of its teams has got players over 20, and this is because they're waiting for a new kit. But as long as you point it out, and as long as you write it down, then you've done all you need to do. It says the number must be placed on the jersey in the center of the front and the back. The color and brightness of the jerseys must contrast with the color and brightness of the numbers must contrast with the color and brightness of the jerseys. And then it goes on to say that the number should be a minimum of 15 centimeters height on the chest and 20 centimeters on the back. Now, I've put this picture of Leon on here because he plays in I think whether he's playing in Poland, or I think this is when he was playing in Italy for Safety Perugia. And you can see that with all of the advertising, the player number has shrunk, but it is still in the center of the kit. Now, there are a number of teams currently playing in the National League which have got new kits where they have got the number placed on the kit on their shoulder. You need to keep pointing it out. The number goes in the middle. It's quite clear. And I don't mind what advertising they get. You can work around it, but the number goes in the middle. Move the number up or down. It doesn't matter, but make it so that it's in the middle. And you can see from Leon's kit that they've got as much advertising as they possibly can on the shirt, and they've still got the number in the right place. It may not be the right size, but I'm not going to measure how big Leon is, so I don't know whether that might be 15 centimeters anyway. But that's what we should be looking for. And ideally, let's have something like this would be fantastic, because there is no doubt what number that player is for Argentina there. And obviously, I think the advert, because it's a national team shirt, there's very little advertising on it, so therefore it's easier to achieve this. And this is the captain, so this is clearly marked, and therefore there is no doubt about who is the captain of this team on the court. And this is what you should be looking for. So make sure the captain stripe is on the team, on the captains. At the toss, captains, you need to have a stripe under your number, and you need to try and keep it there for as much of the game as you possibly can. Okay, and then on equipment, so what do the guidelines say? Well, the guidelines say that before the match, in due time, the referees must apply a careful cross-checking in order to control whether the actual players' numbers are according to the team roster, which has been recorded on the score sheet. In this way, any discrepancies may be discovered, which, if discovered later, may disturb the normal flow of the game. And why do they disturb the normal flow of the game when they're discovered later? So one of your jobs, as soon as you can, is to check the team list numbers against the players you have in front of you, check the team list against the roster against the players on the court, the lineup sheet against the roster, the lineup sheet against the players on the court, and do all of those checks. And it might seem overkill, but I can tell you, it saves you a heck of a lot of hassle if you spot an error at that point, because players are known to change shirts and suddenly change a shirt with a number that the coach hasn't noticed. So it's best to make sure that you do that. And the other thing from the guidelines about coaching staff is that the coaching staff, that's the coach and the assistant coaches, should theoretically be all dressed exactly the same. So if the coach is in a suit, then the assistant coaches have to be in a suit. If the only person that's allowed not to be is the physiotherapist who can be in a training kit. So what the rules say is that they have to be all the same. And for example, it goes as far as to say if the coach takes off his jacket, then the assistant coaches have to take off their jackets as well. This is just a minor point, and what it is just about look and feel of the match. It makes things look right. And you might think, well, this is just a minor point, but when you come to national finals, we will expect this to apply. Okay, so this is when, and some teams do it automatically, that you'll see any of Dave Goodchild's teams, when they turn up, he and his assistant coaches are all wearing exactly the same stuff. And this is all about team presentation. And this is what this guideline is trying to get at. Change of equipment. The referee may authorize one or more players to play barefoot if they wish. To change wet or damaged uniforms between sets or after substitution, i.e. not on the court and not in view of the spectators, provided the colour and design and number of the new uniforms are the same. Okay, and also in cold weather to play in training suits, as long as they are of the same colour as the design for the whole team and they are numbered accordingly. So there is a bit of dispensation there. I've never seen a team try and play in training suits, but obviously players do at times change their uniforms, but they must leave the control area in order to do so. So they are not changing on court. Forbidden objects. Okay, so it's forbidden to wear objects which may cause injury or give artificial advantage to a player. Players may wear glasses or lenses at their own risk. So let's just cover those two bits first. So this is when you're looking at the teams warming up and you spot the amount of jewelry which is being worn by players, rings, for example, and you need to just remind the coach or the player, if you please remove the whatever the jewelry is. If it can't be removed, it needs to be taped, just so that it doesn't cause any possibility that may cause injury to the player or to other players. And then it then talks about compression pads may be worn for protection or support. Okay, now these devices must be of the same color as the corresponding part of the uniform. So if they're worn on the arms, it's the same color as the sleeve. You can use black, you can use white or a neutral color, as long as all the players wear the same color. Now, in our NBL regulations, we have this regulation stipulated. So teams turning up with one player wearing white compression and the rest of the team wearing black, all the players should be one or the other. And it's just another thing, just point it out. Don't make a big thing of it, just point it out. However, if a player has turned up with say they're wearing a white kit and they've decided to go for day glow pink or day glow green or yellow compression, then you can ask them to remove it, because this is clearly done for another reason other than the point of compression is a medical reason, and you're not there to determine the medical reason for wearing compression. However, a player cannot abuse the color scheme of the compression. If they want to have a fluorescent compression when they're training, fine, but they're not allowed to use it in a match. Okay, unless of course their kit is fluorescent pink or fluorescent yellow. So you need to just check that is the case. And sometimes players may use it because they may use the same color as the ball, for example. It just it's there to put off or to distract, and therefore you need to control it. So we've got an example here. So this is Croatia, perhaps. Looks like Croatia, maybe Croatia. Can't see it clearly. Might even be oh no, maybe it's not. Maybe it's one of the African countries. But as you go down the line, you can see that the Libro has got black compression, which is fine. Go down the line again. We've got player number 6 in white compression. We've got player number 12 in black compression. Okay, so the Libro is able to be in black because the Libro is in a different kit to all the others. But players 6 and 12 should be the same. And number 3 is white. So therefore, it's number 12 that's in black that probably needs to change to white in that situation. and you just need to point it out. Let's move on. Okay, team leaders. Okay, so both the team captain and the coach are responsible for the conduct and discipline of their team members. And then it mentions that Libros can not at the moment, but can be either team or game captain. Okay, so the first referee, the guidelines say, must identify the game captain and the coach, and only they will be allowed to intervene during the game. That doesn't mean that the coach is able to talk to the referees. It just means that you need to know the coaches so that when they request a timeout, you're looking at the coach. The referees must know throughout the game who the game captains are. So when the game captain, when the team captain may be on the court, if the team captain leaves the court, then obviously you need to identify the game captain. And at this point, the second referee may do this, or they may get reminded by the first referee who spots whoever spots it, or even the scorer. But when you ask the coach who is the game captain and the coach indicates a player, then it's up to the first referee to ask that player to acknowledge that they have taken the responsibility of being the game captain. Now, there is no need to do this every single time it occurs. If you have, for example, a team captain who's a middle and is off with the libero, and when they're off, maybe the setter is the game captain, you only have to identify the setter as the game captain once, because every time the team captain is off the court, the setter is always the next captain. If the setter's not on the court at any stage, then you'll need to find out who else is now the game captain. And at that point, you would ask them to accept the responsibility. So you just need to do it that first time to make sure that player knows I'm accepting responsibility as captain whenever my team captain is not on the court. You don't have to keep doing it every set or every time it happens. Okay, so and I think the guidelines actually note that at some stage. We'll get to that at a point. So the captain, prior to the match, the team captain represents his or her team at the toss and signs the score sheet. During the match and while on the court, the team captain is the game captain, and when the team captain is not on the court, the coach or the team captain must assign another player on the court to assume the role of game captain. This game captain maintains his or her responsibilities until he or she is substituted, or the team captain returns to play, or the set ends. So in the scenario whereby you have the team captain not on the court and the coach identifies, say, the setter as the game captain, and then at some point the setter is substituted, and the coach identifies another player as the game captain. If that player is still on the court when the setter returns, the setter does not assume the game captain responsibilities back because they're now on the court. Okay, the game captain, once identified, stays the game captain as long as the team captain is not on the court. So if, for example, the team captain is not on the court, and one player is identified as the game captain and that player leaves and another player is identified as the game captain, that player will stay as game captain throughout the rest of the set, regardless of the number of times the player that was originally identified as game captain returns or is on the court. Because it is not a case of going back through the list. It's the last person identified retains it until they are not on the court anymore, or the team captain comes on the court. Okay, so this is key for knowing who is able to talk to you. You must remember to follow this process. Okay. As the game captain changes, obviously each time, you then need to make sure that if it's the first time they've assumed the responsibility, that they know they are the game captain by acknowledging, by putting their hand up. I acknowledge I'm game captain. Got a question?
Hi, this is Chris. Just a quick question. If the team captain is not on court, but there is a coach, are they allowed to ask for timeouts and substitutions?
So if the team captain is the coach as well?
They are not.
So if the team captain is not the coach, then the team captain may not request timeouts.
When they are not on court.
Absolutely. Well, if the coach is present, and the rules are quite clear on this, when the coach is present, the coach is responsible for the timeouts. And at this point, the team captain cannot call timeouts, whether they're on the court or off the court. They are not allowed to if there is a coach present. So the coach does not. So the tricky bit comes in where the coach is a player as well and maybe on the court. If the coach is on the court, then the team captain must assume the responsibility for calling the timeouts. Because it's the tricky bit about when the coach is absent and when the coach is present. The coach does not absent themselves from being coached by being on the court, but if they are on the court, then the team captain must assume the role of identifying timeouts. I think I'm correct in that. I'm sure Di would tell me if I've got that the wrong way around. But it's just one of those ones where you just need. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully. That you just need to be clear who is able to call for the timeout. So if there is a coach, the team captain may not request timeouts. Okay, only the coach. Okay. It comes, as I say, it gets a bit more complicated if the coach is a player and goes onto the court and things. But in general, that's the view. Normally, the rules are written because they don't expect the coach to be a player. They think that the coach will always be non-playing, which always for most cases is absolutely true. But obviously, we get differences when we're at in the MVL. So let's see if we can get before the end of this session. I will have clarified by finding the rule that says what the coach is or is not allowed to do, and we'll make sure that we've covered that point for you, Chris. Is that all right?
Thank you, Nick. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
And I think you are right, Nick. And I think what you do if the coach tries to call it on court, just say through your captain, not disallow it necessarily, but just remind them. That's what I do.
Yeah, just remind them, because I suppose technically it's an improper request, but I wouldn't possibly not go there on that one. I think that if the coach goes onto the court regularly enough, they will know that. They should know that that part of the rule. Okay, so moving on. So when the ball is out of play, the game captain is authorized to speak to the referees to ask for an explanation on the application or interpretation of the rules. Okay, they're not allowed to ask about the subjective application. Okay, so they can't say, well, in my opinion, that was a double contact or a catch, ref, because at the end of the day, the referee says, well, I looked at the contact and I did not consider it a fault. So on that part of it, they can make their point once, probably once, and then you move on. If they want to disagree with an explanation, then they may raise a protest. But in the case of a protest, the protest must be for something which is the incorrect application of the rules, not the subjective application of the rules, the actually objective application of the rules. So, for example, you give the same player 2 yellow cards. You give the same team 2 yellow card warnings, or you give a player 2 red cards, or so you don't go through the sanction scale, or you do something else which is a clear application error of the rules, not an interpretation of the rules. Slight difference, but it's very important for protest. So what you must do is if you've completely misinterpreted the rule and you've got the rule wrong, then you could get a protest. But if it's just because you decided that the application of the rule was slightly different in your opinion, then that's not really a point for protest. So it's very, very clear on this one. So team captains should not try and protest against things like ball handling, for example. They're on a hiding to nothing. They can't do it for a start. So don't get into lengthy conversations about things like ball handling. Deal with it once. Don't let the conversation come back again in the same match, because you've set your level. Try and keep to your level. Don't have the same conversations about, oh, well, I think this was double. I think that was a double contact. I think that was a catch this time. You don't need to be told every time. And at that point, you've got an option. You just say to the captain, sorry, captain, I know you can come and talk to me, but you can't abuse that that allowance. And then you've got a couple of ways of dealing with it. You either sanction the captain, or for example, if you think they're just delaying the game, then use your delays to deal with it. But they can legitimately ask, why did you call that? So it may be 4 contacts, for example, and you may say, well, the first contact was not a block, and it wasn't a block for these reasons. The player did not touch the ball while part of their body was higher than the top of the net, or they weren't close enough to the net. They weren't a player close to the net. And you just give you a reason. You use the volleyball language for giving the reason. And once you've given the reason, it's not a discussion. That's the reason why I did it, and the captain should accept that. Okay. What the FIVB says about this is that the game captain should ask for an explanation of the rules at referee's application, and the referee must give it, if necessary, not only with repetition of hand signals, but with the FIVB working language of English, speaking briefly using official terminology in the rules. So what they're asking you to do is, if you stick to the terminology of the rules, then you can't get into a discussion about things, because if you just stick to the rule language, it's very clear. The reason for the decision is this. Okay. The game captain has the right only to ask for an explanation or on the application or interpretation of the rules made by the referees in the name of his or her teammates. So again, this is where other players may start. Oh, but if they want to ask the question, then it has to go through the team captain, the game captain. Sorry. Once the ball is out of play, only the game captain is authorized to speak to the referees. We've already stated that, to ask for authorization, so they can change all or part of the equipment, verify the position of the teams, check the floor, the net, the ball, etc. And in the absence of the coach, unless the team has an assistant coach who has overtaken the coach's functions, to request timeouts and substitutions. Okay, so in this case, the coach, for this purposes of this part of the rule, coach does not absent themselves by not being on the sideline, by being in the team. This means if the coach is ill, or the coach has been expelled, or the coach has been disqualified, then the game captain can ask the first referee, can my assistant coach assume the coach's responsibilities? And in those cases, the first referee would normally, and I can't think of a reason why you would say no, but in those cases, you would accept that and say, yes, of course, they can accept the coach's responsibilities. We talked about when the coach was on the court. That is the point at which the coach actually is, for this part of the rule, in terms of asking for timeouts, absent, but the game captain would ask at that point. And that's what I think we were trying to get to just now. The other parts of things, they change all the part of the equipment. Normally, you know, if the captain comes over and says, look, the ball's too wet, therefore the ball, I think the ball might be soft, the quickest thing to do is change it. Okay, don't get into a discussion about whether you think the ball is wet, is dry enough, or whether the ball is the right pressure or whatever. Just change it for the spare. And then when you get to the end of the set or appropriate time, the second referee can check the pressure, or they can check the ball is right, and just get on with the game. Don't get into discussions about whether they think that this is right or not. Just get it changed. It's just simple enough. If they ask you to verify the positions of the teams, all you have to do is say yes or no. Is the team correct or not? Yes, it is. So if they say, you know, just checking, is that team correct? Yes. Yes, captain. Or no. You can't say no, because obviously you've got to correct them in that case. So in that case, you're just saying yes, they are. Or if the captain comes to you and says, who is my server, or which player is in position 2, or whatever it is, then you can get that information from the scorer, and they're quite right to do that. But they can't keep asking it. You know, if they have to ask it more than a couple of times, then they really need to pay slightly more attention to their lineup at the start of the set. But in this case, they can ask for verify the positions of the teams, and the answer that you would give them is yes, because obviously to give them any other answer would be indicating that a fault was about to occur. And obviously we can't do that. That would be not something that we want to give the information across. So at the end of the match, the team captain thanks the referees and signs the score sheet. And if they've notified in due time to the first referee, confirm and record on the score sheet an official protest. And remember that if the protest doesn't happen at the time that the incident occurs, there can be no protest. You cannot protest after the match for something that happened during the match if you haven't protested at the time. So we get to the coach. I think I was going to put a picture in here, but there we go. Throughout the match, the coach conducts the play of his or her team from outside the playing court. She selects the starting lineups to substitute and takes timeouts. In these functions, his or her contacting official is a second referee. That does not mean that there is a discussion going on here. This means that the contact for a lineup sheet, the contact for a timeout is the second referee. The contact for the substitution is the player entering the substitution zone and the second referee allowing that to occur. There's no discussion. There's no two-way discussion going on here. Prior to the match, the coach records or checks the names of and numbers of his or her players on the score sheet and then signs it. This confirms the team that's playing. So during the match and prior to each set, gives the second referee or the score of the lineup sheet duly filled in and signed. They sit on the team bench nearest the scorer, but they may leave it. They can request timeout for substitution. They may, as well as other team members, give instructions to the players on the court. The coach may give these instructions while standing or walking in the free zone in front of his or her team's bench, from the extension of the attack line to the warm-up area, if it is situated in the control area, without disturbing or delaying the match. If the warm-up area is situated behind the team bench, then the coach may only move between the extension of the attack line up to the end line, not to the warm-up, to the back of the court, the back of the service zone. They have to stop at the end line if their team bench is behind the bench. Their team warm-up area is behind the bench. And in doing so, they must not obstruct the line judges. And if you think they are, then you need to ask them to stand back or move out of the way or give the line judge the room to do their job. The FOVB gets very vexed about coaches, and this is what they say. The coach does not have the right to request anything from the members of the refereeing corps, except regular game interruptions, timeouts, and substitutions. But if on the scoreboard the number of used interruptions or the score are not indicated or are not correct, she may inquire with the scorer whilst the ball is out of play. The coach has no right to disturb the game or the work of the officials. The coach does not have the right to enter the court for any reason unless it is to assist an injured player, and would only do so at the request of the second referee. The coach has no right to speak nor protest to the referees or the game jury for that matter, and they can only answer the questions from the second referee that clarify their challenge requests. So this is where if a coach makes a challenge request, the second referee's first responsibility is to go to the coach and say, "Coach, what was the challenge for?" And the coach would then say, "Ball out on the end line, ball out on the far sideline, ball out on the near sideline, attack hit, fault, player was in the front zone," whatever it is, but they would identify what the fault was. And that's the only time that they would really talk to the second official. If the coach or any other team official's attitude exceeds the disciplinary limitations of misconduct in Rule 21, the first referee has to apply the appropriate sanctions without hesitation. A volleyball match is a sportive show of players, not of the team officials. Referees should not ignore this distinction. It is the very strong instruction. This is when this means that this is when they're getting very annoyed about behaviour of coaches, and one particular coach, and that coach I think was a Brazilian team official, where the coach indulges in excessive play acting or demonstration, or where the coach or any other team member addresses the match supervisor in a loud appeal or in an aggressive or derogatory manner or insult, then the first referee must make a strict application of the sanction scale. What they're saying here is, do not allow the coaches to dictate to the referees what their views are. And what they're talking about is coaches that stand there and constantly tell you what they think of the handling of the other team's setter, for example, or whether they think balls are in or out. First time, deal with it. Game captain, tell your coach that I do not need him to referee the game. If he does, he can come over here and take the stand or whatever you want to say. Tell the game captain to go and tell the coach that that's it. He's had one chance. he's used it. If he does it again, it'll either be a warning or a sanction, up to you, depending on severity. Okay, so do not allow coaches to shout. If the coach starts shouting at you from the other side of the court, it has to be dealt with. Yeah, it needs to be relatively clear. And they give an example, and we'll use the example from the casebook. And this is the example from the casebook. So the ball looks like it was out on this near sideline, and clearly the line judge has has given it in. So the coach is slightly animated. Now, first and foremost, his initial behaviour is worthy of sanction. The second thing, let's go back and let's stop it. So we've got the ball that's now probably landed, probably just about out. So note our assistant coaches are all dressed the same, nice to see, and they're all sat down. But if we move play on, okay, so now we have an assistant coach who's almost in the substitution zone. We have a coach who actually is in the substitution zone, and we know that they're not allowed to be. So this in itself, okay, this could be a warning for this guy, or it could be a sanction for this coach. Okay, now hands on his head. You can now see that the other assistant coach is up. This coach is now in the substitution zone as well. This one has made an action towards the first referee of don't believe it, and they're about to point to the line judge. The other coach has now seen an opportunity here to start pointing at, are you going to allow this behavior, referee? What's going on over here? This is outrageous. You cannot allow this. Okay. The second referee possibly is not doing anything to dispel what's going on here. First referee is showing ball in, so he's obviously going with the line judge. It's a difficult one to overrule. It's on the far sideline. If you haven't got challenged, then probably the first referee doesn't have much of a chance here as to what they need to do next. But as things go on, the coach finally and everyone sits down, and then he suddenly gets to that point. Where is it here? He suddenly gets to this point, and then suddenly realizes he should be calming everybody down, not getting everybody worked up. And then, as soon as he's done that, he has this go at the second referee. So I don't know the outcome. I don't know the outcome of this situation. That's 6-6 in set 5. But this coach, at the very least, should have just lost this team another point. It should be a penalty minimum, and you can take your pick as to which of the officials you want to sanction. In this case, the players on the court have not really said anything. They've just left it up to the coach. They've just left it up to the coach, and the coach has taken over. The coach here actually needs to be sanctioned in this particular case. And this is what the FIVB is talking about. This is the coach showing that that they have the passion, that they're supporting their team, they're doing everything they can for their team, and the coach in doing so knows that he's overstepping the line. So he's basically challenging the first referee to take action. So do not be afraid to do so if you have to. Okay, it's assistant coach. So the assistant coach sits on the team bench and has no right to intervene in the match. Absolutely none at all. They sit on the bench. Okay, they don't get up from the bench. They don't wander off to the warm-up area to talk to the team. They sit on the bench. Okay, and they can give instruction to the coach. They can talk to the coach. They don't get up. Okay, they sit on the bench. That's all they're doing. So the bench personnel at a match, they sit there, and they've no right to show their views to the officials or anything. So you just need to remember that this is what the assistant coach is there for. Should the coach have to leave his or her team for any reason, including sanction, but excluding entering the court as a player, an assistant coach may assume the coach's functions for the duration of the absence once confirmed by the referee through the game captain. So this is when, if the coach is expelled, you can, and sometimes it may be that you might ask the game captain, do you need, if you've got an assistant coach, do you want your assistant coach to be the coach now? just remind them that this could happen. It might just help them get through the situation that they've got themselves in. But you don't have to, of course. And I think that probably, oh, we've got a video here from the casebook. Let's see what this one is. Oh yeah, okay. So this is the assistant coach. Okay, so this is USA Italy in the World Cup, I think. What you're looking at here is there are we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 assistant coaches. We've got one over here, and this assistant coach is helping the player warm up. This is not allowed. Okay, the assistant coach is not allowed. You know, during the game, once the game has started, the assistant coach is not allowed to warm up with the players. Okay, so this needs to be controlled if this occurs. If you see this happening at a game, okay. It's just an aside. The assistant coach responsibility is sit on the bench, help the coach wherever you can, but they just sit on the bench. Move on. Casebook. So now it's over to you lot. These are not difficult questions because they're casebook on the easy stuff, the basic, the hygiene factors of volleyball. So, okay, casebook 1.2 then. Is a player allowed to wear a ring that's likely to cause injury? So go on then. Easy answer. Who's going to be first? So we unmute. Is there a way of unmuting? Go on then, Chris. You've got your hand up first.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how this goes, but they are not. They should be asked to remove it. If this cannot be removed, they should tape it.
Absolutely. Yep, that's exactly what needs to happen. So you just need to do that check whilst the teams are warming up, just to have a look at their hands, just to check what's going on, because sometimes they just forget that they've got rings on there, that they haven't taken the rings off, or they haven't taped them, or what have you. But that's all you need to do. Just mention it and get it done. So casebook 1.3 then. So what is the proper response by the first referee if the game captain constantly questions the first referee's decision? And I shall get the actual FIVB response ready. So who's got their hand up? Giorgio?
My hands up was for question number 1, but I can answer question number 2 as well. But sorry, going back to question number 1.
Yep.
I challenged a player on Super League Women because she was wearing not a ring, but she was wearing a very large watch. And she told me, nobody told me to take my watch off for the last 4 years playing volleyball. I said, well, I'm sorry, you have to take it off. It was really large metallic watch. And again, there are no rules, but I mean, the watch can cause injury if you block or whatever. But how come this particular part of accessory is not included in the book?
I think it is in terms of it's implied. I think it's just general instruction to the referees that you're on the lookout for this sort of thing, and we're not as strong on it as we perhaps were 15 to 20 years ago, and I think that it's something which we sometimes may forget to do. I do think that when a player says to you, "Oh, nobody's ever told me before," that's probably unlikely, and they're probably just saying that just to make you. Well, if I say that and you change your mind and don't push it, but you just in those situations stand your ground and say, look, it's you have to take it off. I had a player that when she was warming up, she was wearing a long chain. When she was warming up, it was inside a very tight playing shirt. It didn't problem. And then the first point of the match, she was blocking or something, and suddenly this chain appeared, and I stood there from first referee looking at it, going, "Where on earth did that come from?" Because I hadn't seen it before. But it was then just stop the match. You have to take that off. Sorry, please go and take it off. Or as soon as you spot something like that, then even if you're late spotting it, don't just ignore it. Just say, look, I think you really ought to take that off, and I'll give you time to do it. I'm not going to give you a delay or anything. Unless, of course, Unless, of course, before the start of the match, you'd ask them to take it off and they haven't done it. And you have to stop the match to get them to do it. Then they have a cause to say, look, you know, I did ask you to do this and you haven't done it. So in that case, you might think, but absolutely right. Yeah, as soon as get it dealt with. Well done.
Okay, anyway, I'm not shying away from a question 1.3. The
Yes.
answer is really tell the captain that at the moment it just you're questioning too much, you delay the game, and I'm rejecting your constant questioning my decision. And nicely, you push him away.
Yeah, absolutely. And just remind them that if you know if you come back, then I may have to go to sanctions to deal with it, because I can't have you coming here questioning all decisions. So
Absolutely.
Remind them that once you've it's not a power that they can abuse. Just because they can doesn't mean they should. Is the way I look at it. And sometimes you know exactly what the captain's going to talk to you about, and you know, I had one with Polonia ladies at the weekend. She barely got halfway across the court before I managed to stop her and politely inform her that I wasn't going to listen to her anyway, so she may as well just go and go and replace herself with the Libro and chunder away on the bench about whatever she was going to talk to me about, because you know I saw immediately that her reaction. I'm thinking, right, I know what she's going to say. But I said, no, please, and just don't let her, don't get to that situation if you don't have to. Okay, so the game captain asks the first referee for a lineup check. Is this allowed? Who have we got? Herman?
Yeah. Hi, Nick. In normal circumstances, I would say, you know, as a first referee, please talk to the second referee. Although in many circumstances, like in Bucks matches, there is no second referee. So the first referee, we are controlling the rotational of the team. So I allow that, of course, because I have the lineup sheets in my pocket.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way is that it's for the game captain. Initially, they should look to the first referee, and you know that it's not the unofficial signal is this. They should look to the first referee, and the first referee would then clearly point at the second referee to say, look, you know, I can't give you that information. With the tablets now, if the tablets are in use, then the first referee possibly could be giving that information. But similarly, the first referee will probably still defer that to the scorer, because the tablet link might not be up to date, and therefore they would say no. Just double check with the second referee on this, and who might ask the scorer for the information. But in the instance, initially you'd expect the game captain to talk to the first referee, and the first referee to say yes, fine, please go over and find the information out. The general point on this one is that it shouldn't be abused. Okay, Rita.
I was going to say they can only ask for their own team, though. They can't ask about the other team.
Correct.
Okay, so they can ask about the other team.
Well, they can ask. They can not told it.
Absolutely. What you cannot give them information that tells them who is front court and back court, or whether the team is right or wrong. All they can do is ask, can you just verify the other team? And you go, okay, thank you very much. I verified the other team. On you go, captain. What you're not doing is giving them any information about whether the team is correct or not. All you're saying is, thank you for the prompt about verifying. We've had a look and we've verified. Whether we found something wrong or not, I'm not going to tell you. Okay, you can't give that information, because obviously you're setting yourself up for the situation that may occur at the next rally if there is a problem. Now, what the casebook says is that the game captain can do this. Obviously, they have the right to make a request, but it must not be abused. They can only have detailed information about their own team. And they cannot have any information about the opponent team as to whether they are correctly positioned or not. So that's what it says. I think we've got a quick view of something that would have happened to show this, and this is Italy. And so here we go.
I'm very concerned. You keep putting Italy as a bad boys here. You know, there are many other nations. You know, Nick. I be offended by this treatment. There's always Italy around.
This is because the amount of information, the amount of volleyball which is played in Italy allows so many situations that can be used for teaching aids.
Sure.
Hey, Giorgio, I haven't seen Spain yet here.
Okay, so in this situation, we've got the team now. As we can see here, this is Karen Petsos confirming to Savani who the next player to serve is. But if you look at the start of this section, yeah, okay, there. So you can see that his initial first movement is to say, wait, and he looks at the first referee. Okay, so he's done the right thing. He's gone to the first referee first, and the first referee, if you watch, is indicating to the second referee that the second referee should answer the question. Now this is in the time before tablets on the post and what have you, and the second referee's checked with the scorer and just checked the number and given the information, and that's exactly the process that should take place. Okay, 1.5. How does the game captain legally and politely request the first referee to ask a line judge if he signalled a fault? What do we think? Possible? Not possible? Herman?
I would say yes, it's possible. You just need to be polite, go and put your hand up as the first referee, and you check with your line judge.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So all you need to do as first referee is say, yes, hang on a minute, and just look at the line judge and just repeat your signal, please. Okay, and the line judge repeats their signal, and then you go, there we go, that's the information that we required. Then let's move on with the game. Okay, so that's all you're doing. You're just asking if there is some uncertainty, for example, on a block next to antenna situation, then you may need to ask the line judge to come round and explain, did you actually mean touch or did you mean out? Yeah, just check. That's a bit of feedback coming through. Possibly Tim. Do it again.
Someone's muted again.
Okay. And I've just remembered to unmute myself as well. Okay, so 1.6 then, is the referee's decision final? May she change his or her decision if the team protests?
Hi, Nick.
Hello, Guy.
Yeah, I put my hand up and I didn't know whether you could see it, sorry. If I had any doubt, I would call my second referee over, but I wouldn't change it because of the team's protest. If I got some different information from somewhere, then that may influence me to change it, but certainly not from a team's protest.
Yep, that's fine. And the simple answer, let's ask who we got. We've got Tim as well. Tim, let's just get your comment first.
Yes, I had this the weekend. I didn't see it, but the second referee did, so I changed my decision. It was initially the team captain was protesting, but I checked with the second referee, and what she was complaining about was correct, so I changed my decision.
Yep, very good. Lido?
Depends if it's a decision of a interpretational fact.
Yes, absolutely.
If, for example, a front court player hits a ball, you thought it was a back court player and you called for an illegal hit, and then you realise that he's actually a front court player, then you have to change your mind because you got it wrong.
Absolutely, and I think the answer to this one is don't be afraid to think that it doesn't show that you're weak if you take information from second referee, from line judges, that changes your decision. You just have to say, okay, I didn't see that properly, and therefore I've now got the information. I'm going to change my decision. And again, you can you just need to be clear and take the responsibility on to do it. One of my first things I did when I was at the I think it was 2011 European Championships, I called a Russian attack as in fall in on the court. Mr. Elekno's immediate response told me that I was wrong. But all we did is we just stopped the game and said, right, just calm down a second. I gave myself time by calling my second referee over, which was the great Serbian referee Dejan Jovanovic. And I said, Dejan, and he said not down. So and I said, thank you very much. And as he went away, all I did is I just put my hand up to say sorry to the Russian team. Replay. Okay, my mistake, and just acknowledged it and said it's my mistake. It's a replay. And we moved on, and that way I think that it dissolved the situation that possibly could have occurred there. So yeah, but again, it's not this is one where you just need to be careful that you don't get a situation whereby the captain is trying to think that every time if they protest enough, you'll change your mind. Because if it's down to your decision against their view, and you've got to remember that they're looking at the game from a different angle to you. You're looking at the game from side on, they're looking at the game from front on, and therefore certain situations look completely different from their position and from your position. Situation I had at the weekend was with the captain trying to talk about a double contact. Now the setter was setting the ball towards me. Now the ball didn't look great, but she's setting the ball towards me, so our hands are the other side of the ball. So how I am, and they weren't under the ball, they were the other side of the ball. So my perspective, I cannot judge something that I cannot see. So in that instance, whilst it may not have looked great, I gave her the benefit of the doubt because I could not see her hands, and therefore I could not see the two playing the action. So in that case, there's sometimes when you say, well, look, captain, you're looking at it from a completely different angle to me, and you would have seen something different. You just have to take those situations and move on. We can't just get worked up about them and impact the game for everybody else because of them. Quick one on communication devices allowed for coaches during the game. Are they? I don't think there's any coach I've seen in the UK try to use communication devices apart from at national finals. Sometimes they're mic'd up to the stats team. So yes, it's absolutely acceptable for them to be mic'd up to the stats team, and the stats team will be telling them information during the match, and that's allowed. That's not a problem. If you ever see it, of course. The only reason I've shown this picture of the great Hugh McCutcheon here for the USA is because if you roll the video on slightly, something dreadful happens to this picture. There, did you see that right at the end of that there? It's sort of like there it is. It's Dominic who gets into the frame right at the end there. So I just put that in just for a little bit of humour there, that you catch Dominic in that clip.
Nick, can I go back 1 sec, please?
Yes,
to the case where I fully agree with your view that if you cannot see a double touch by the setter, you wouldn't call it. But if your second referee can see it and signal it discreetly, would you?
Yeah, you can do, absolutely. If you see it, if you see their signal quickly enough, then take their information. The issue with the second referee signalling double contact is that you may have different views on the level, but also if the second referee signals it, then the coaches can see the signal as well, and then the coaches can try and create. If they can create if it's the second referee has shown this and you didn't call it, and they can see it. So it's one for the second referees to be really careful with if you're gonna signal it. You know, it's got to be absolutely clear that this should have been called. Otherwise, stay within your sphere of responsibility, because it could cause you a few difficulties between the coach and the first referee. So just be careful, is what I would say. Quickly moving on then, just got a couple more to do. Second referee told a coach not to talk or distract the scorer. Is this the correct action by the second referee? Guy, are you still hand up from earlier, or do you want to comment on this one? Tim?
Yes, this is correct. You should tell him it's the only time he's allowed to is if you want to check who the scorer, who the server is. So you're well within your right to tell him not to distract the scorer.
Yeah, this is one where the second referee can talk to the coach. If they can dissolve the situation really quickly, they can sort it out, resolve it, whatever it is, then the second referee should just step in here and just mention it. Okay, just quickly to the coach. Coach, you know, you can only talk to the scorer if the information is not on the scoreboard, or you know, if you need information through your game captain, please, to the first referee, and then we'll resolve it. Okay, but just make sure that they are aware. Quick one on the warm-up area. Can a reserve player sit on the floor in the warm-up area instead of standing or stretching? Simple yes or no, I think, is all that's required on this one.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely, they can. They just sit on the floor and stretch if they want to. If they want to take up a load of space by sitting on the floor when there's a load of other players trying to get in the warm-up area, that's entirely up to them. Okay, can a coach ask the scorer for information about the number of timeouts that have been taken by the other team?
No.
Yes, but he won't get an answer. He shouldn't ask for that.
This is absolutely correct. It's none of that coach's business. How many timeouts the other team has taken. If they can't count the number of times the team have been off the court for a chat during a set of 20 minutes, then perhaps they need help. But the scorer's not going to give them that information, and therefore this is another one where the second referee should say, "Whoa, coach, you're not allowed to ask that, and let's get on with the game." So yeah, just move things on as quickly as you can in that situation. Can a captain make a formal protest on the score sheet if he has not notified the referee of his intention during the match? This is a simple yes or no, and the answer is no, absolutely. If the protest is not made at the time, then they cannot be marked on the score sheet. The assistant coach came to the sideline to assist the players to find a wet spot. The first referee called the game captain and told him to tell the assistant coach to stay on the bench. Did the first referee make the correct decision? What do we know about the assistant coach?
They need to sit down.
Absolutely. Di?
Oh, sorry, I was going to say the same thing. He can't get up and start pointing.
Absolutely. So we just remember the assistant coach has no right to take part to be involved in the match. Okay, that's the standard. That's where you say no, assistant coach, it's sit down. Correct action by the first referee in this situation. We've got one more then. After a rally, a coach asked the second referee if his server was correct. The second referee checked the rotation order with the scorer and replied that the correct player was ready to serve. The first referee continued the match. Is this the correct process of the referees? And I think that we've already seen the video for this one, so it shouldn't be too difficult to say that in this case, the process was absolutely correct. It gave the right information. You need to be clear, actually, that when the information is given, that you are checking with the scorer, and if you have to go over it, because we don't have tablets and all this sort of communication devices and what have you, if you have to go over to the score sheet and look at it, go and look at it. Okay, go and check it. You know how to read a score sheet upside down. It's a talent all second referees should have, and you should be able to identify clearly on both teams who the servers is. And if you look at it and go, well, that doesn't look right, just double check that you know that the two positions, the team that received first should always be one position ahead on the score sheet, or the same position as the other team. Whether the team is serving, when they're serving, they must be one ahead. So you know what you're looking for. You know whether the score is correct in terms of they've got the right number of rotations around the score sheet. Rita. I think you're on mute, Rita.
Correct, I was on mute. I always thought the coach wasn't allowed to ask for the thing that had to come through the game captain or the team captain on the court.
Hang on a minute. Just check. You're absolutely right. In this case, no. Sorry, I was getting confused. This is where the coach should have asked the game captain to ask for the information, not the coach. Well spotted. You're absolutely right, and therefore one bad mark for me if I allowed that to happen. And you are correct, Rita. You get an extra gold star.
Just edit it out of the video recording.
Yes. Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. So I think that is going to be our last. Yes, that is our last question on this this section of Let's Talk Rules. I know it's a relatively dry area of the rules, but those five rules are very important for making sure that you set the game up correctly and you have the structure by which to play, and the behaviour of the teams, and you know that everything that is going on is within the you've got the right control on the game, and the game looks as good as it can be. So it's an important part of the rule book. A lot of numbers to remember, and this is where a lot of questions that you'll see come from this as to how big control areas and playing areas can be. So just bear those in mind. And if you ever get to national finals and somebody says to you, have you measured the court? Then you'll know what your diagonals are and what your maximum distances are to allow before you get to the advertising boardings and the delimitation of the playing area. So get to know it. You lock it away, and I'm sure that most of us will always do most of these checks without ever having to refer back to the rule book. But they are important rules setting the game up. So that I think means that in terms of Let's Talk Rules, Rita, you can always ask the home team whether they actually have such an implement to check. Certainly, if you go to certainly if I go to an international match, the home team will have to provide a tape measure that's long enough to do 20.12 meters, so that I can check it, or have an electronic device that will do similar. But yeah. So as I was saying, I think we will obviously come back when we talk about the new rule set at some stage during next year. We will also have some short soundbite Let's Talk rules, if we can do that through the winter, on rules that might be causing some interpretation issues, but those will be whereby we're particularly looking at one phrase or one particular action, and therefore hopefully there'll be sort of half an hour discussions about a rule rather than trying to do some sort of long presentation about it. And I think we'll do it that way. And of course, a lot of this information will hopefully now be used to support grade 4 courses and people learning the rules and dipping into interpretation and that sort of thing. If you do have obviously any questions at any stage, just send them through to me, and we can convene a session that on certain aspects which are causing some confusion or want some clarification or things over time. So, but thank you very much for those of you that have stuck with me from last December right the way through to what is now nearly a year of Let's Talk Rules sessions, which has been it's been great doing them. I think we've covered nearly everything in the rulebook, apart from referee signals, line judge signals, and diagrams at the end of the rulebook, which we might do referee signals as a quick one, a short a short Let's Talk rules on referee signals at in a short while, but maybe we'll do that in December or sometime if we've got time. But I realise that December we've got many more different things to be getting on with, so maybe it will come after Christmas, and that'll give me time to focus on grade 4 referee courses, which is the next thing that we need to do as a focus to get more referees back into the game. So I would just like to say thank you to all of you for your participation and attention. It's been wonderful to do these sessions.